Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Couple of quick announcements, just a reminder on recycling. If you're not a recycler in the town of Waterboro, we certainly encourage you to recycle. We do have single sort recycling in town where you can take all these cardboards and paper goods and cans and bottles and put them all in the same compactor at the transfer station. We also have a couple of silver bullets around town, one here in the town hall parking lot and one over at the Lions Club over in South Waterboro that you can put your recycling material in. So we encourage that. Every ton of recycling materials saves the town about $88 in disposal fees. So encourage that. I do have an announcement I've been asked to read from the Waterboro Historical Society. For those of you that don't know, the Waterboro Historical Society has recently been deeded the ownership of the Grange Hall, which is on the West Road in South Waterboro. The intent of that, I think, is to preserve the historical nature of the Grange Hall and what it stood for in the community. And the announcement is on Saturday, May 22nd, an open house will be held from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Encouraged to come and see the before project, share a cup of coffee with the community members, reminisce about what was and what can be. Many hands make the light work, so we hope you join us in volunteering time or by donating to this revitalization project. You don't necessarily need to be a current resident of Waterboro, just have a love of Waterboro's past and future. Support and appreciate the work the Society does to preserve the history and the buildings within the community. So I encourage anybody that is a follower of the Historical Society and their efforts within the community to attend the open house on the 22nd. So, and that now I think probably ties together most of the different aspects of various corners of town, if you will, into the Historical Society. So, all right, moving into the agenda. Any other announcements from the board? Jerry Day, you're up, 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, my name is Jerry Daigle. I'm the assessors agent for the town of Waterboro. And you have before you an abatement request for Guy Walker Piper and Donald Piper, and also an abatement request for Hecox, Bertha B. and Harry A. And from the information that we've received over the past few weeks, I was able to assemble them into the one memo that you have before you that's dated April 21st with my recommendations. I won't go into the history of the property only because you pretty much have that in the information that we presented. But it is a property, I don't know if Dave can flash over to the map. The lake, of course, will be the one that looks like the blue sky. I tried to embellish it today. Town Hall will be the property with the pink stripes. And the subject property that's owned jointly, or I should say half ownership by both parties applying for the abatement, is that square that's framed in black next to the lake. There's a red line there, and that red line represents the diagonal 100 feet location between the edge of the lake and the property that we're discussing. Although they don't own the access to go across that 100 feet, they are, I think, in the best location on the lake without actually having access in the front of the cottage. The property has been appraised, and we have a copy of that appraisal. They appraised the property for $167,000. The property was fairly complete, although I don't agree with the value conclusion, only because I think they, or she, I should say, the appraiser in this case, was probably not able to find comparable properties that have as good a location as this one, although the ones she did find were all located along the lake. And they all have indirect access, and they are shown in that appraisal. The valuation of the property is what was contested, and because of the property owner's request, an abatement was filed because of their consideration that the property was overvalued. And you have the study of land assessments that I conducted. What I did is I took the comparables in the property, only because they are the closest to the subject, according to the appraiser, and I agree with her that they are at least comparable. They are all located around the Ossipee. I was able to determine that the price per acre of the assessed value, and I only used the assessment comparison here, was $176,400. And these were developed from the comparable lots. The Heacock Piper parcel is 0.87 acres. And it would have an adjusted land value of $153,400. I did not adjust the value of the building. And my recommendation for the abatement request that was been made would be that the current valuation of $346,200, which is what was placed on that property during the revaluation. I think in the latest correspondence that we received from Attorney O'Toole, he fails to mention, or at least may not remember, that the revaluation took place in 2007, which was fiscal 2008. Also, the value for 2009 and 2010 was also based on, quote, the revaluation. And it did, in fact, increase the property value almost 100%. I think in the past it may have been assessed without consideration to its location or its property value. And during the revaluation, we were pretty much going around Lake Ossipee, trying to determine what lakefront property ought to be, as well as those that are located within a distance of or a view of the lake. Also, the overvaluation consideration is something that I think has been considered by myself, and I'm trying to explain to the board that the valuation, although has been overstated, if you would say, or I would say, I am then now asking the board to consider the revised valuation that I have here and also in front of you in this memo for the abatement, that we reduce the property value to $235,800. with each half being assessed for $117,900. The taxes to be abated for both halves would be $585.12. The issue of past years for overtaxing, the town had this matter before them, at least this board did, and did grant the overpayment of taxes due to tax billing errors. There was confusion when the two lots were created into each half, and we determined that $2,670.90 was to be returned, and the board did do that in January of this year. I do not feel that the board needs to return any tax monies from 2008 through 2010, 2009, I'm sorry, 2 years, 2008 and 2009. The abatement for 2010, I understand, should be reduced due to overvaluation. But the other 2 years, the overvaluation consideration was not really made known to the town officially until we received the written appraisal report that was dated January of 2010 and presented to the town in March of 2010 as part of the abatement. In other words, we did not have in our possession from the taxpayers any evidence to show that the property was overvalued. I know they felt it was overvalued because I spoke to Mr. Haycock, but I think at that time I recommended to him that he do get an appraisal, and that did happen. So I am recommending to the board that they do not grant the abatement for the overtaxing, only because there was no error in that period.
Okay,
I guess that's the end.
questions? Comments?
What impact, if any, does this have on any light properties surrounding Ossipee Lake?
Well, the comparables they chose, the assessments vary. And one thing that the Maine law does allow assessments in Maine to be is within 10%. So in other words, you could never, ever say that an assessment is right on the value, only because there's a range there that it can fluctuate. So there are some fluctuations amongst the properties that we use for the comp, as a matter of fact. To say that it's going to impact, it's certainly not going to impact waterfront properties that are on the lake. I think their marketability is still good and beyond the value of this kind of lot. So I'd say minimum impact.
Was there water access with this lot via Route 5?
Only through the right-of-way along Route 5, along with 8 other properties.
The 235.8 valuation is based on 2007 values, right?
Correct. The other thing I didn't point out is the red line on the map. That property is owned by family members, I guess is the term I'll use. But again, this property has not been deeded the right to cross the lawn to get to the lake.
Anything else? Jerry, any comments, requests, information? Doug?
I have a lot of concerns about the abatements. Being a selectman at the time that this reevaluation went through, I understand how the property values have changed in the last 3 years since this was done. But at the rate of abatements that we've been given, and if we abate properties this close to the water, you're going to open the floodgate to a tremendous amount of abatement issues. You've got how many houses in Lake Arrowhead that are on the second row that only have easements through 10-foot walkways or where public roads abut Lake Arrowhead itself? I think that before the board starts issuing abatements, they should reconsider this whole situation. If property values have dropped, then maybe we should just devalue the town by 15%, increase the tax rate, and then everybody will be happy. They'll be paying the same taxes, but whoa, our property's not worth as much as it was. Then next year, when the value goes back up where it belongs, then they're gonna say, oh, we got $200,000 more than our property was valued at. When you take a value submitted to you by the applicant, the appraisers that done that could use short sales, they can use fast sales, they can use bankruptcy sales. Unless the board has at least 3 or 4 competent appraisers go out and use standard appraisals, not mixed appraisals, that's the only way you're going to do it. The town would have to invest the money to have several private appraisals done that were real appraisals, not short sale and otherwise. And I think you really better think hard before you start giving out these. You know, the town was reevaluated so that everybody would be on a level playing field. Now, we're going to create dips and valleys. The ones that complain, the ones who squeal the loudest, are going to get tax breaks, where the people who pay their taxes, because they realize the town needs a certain amount of income to operate, are going to be, you know, the people who pay the most and, you know, suffer the most. I just think this is a very uneven road to go down. Abatements are always a questionable thing, and I think when we start doing them in wholesale, they're going to be more questionable, and that's what will happen.
Thanks, Doug. Mr. O'Toole, would you like to give you the floor here?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Michael O'Toole, and I represent the owners of the property at 423 Secocas. You do have, hopefully you have my recent letter as well as my earlier submissions. I was reviewing the meeting of April 7th, and it struck me, you were talking about the difference between abating this year's taxes as opposed to the last couple of years. And it seemed to be the understanding of the board that there's a different standard for the earlier years than it is for the current year. And that's not the case at all. I have the copy of the statute here with me for I can pass out. It's basically you have the authority as assessors, and I didn't realize that you were the assessors. I thought initially that Mr. Daigle was the assessor. But you have the authority to abate taxes on an application filed within 1 year, basically the current taxes, in order to correct any illegality, error, or irregularity in assessment. You also have the authority as the municipal officers to abate taxes on an application filed after 1 year, but within 3 years, to correct any illegality, error, or irregularity in assessment. It's the same thing. And what we've been saying for a year now is that there's certainly some errors in assessment. And hopefully you have this chart that I sent with, I probably sent 10 copies because I attached one to each of my applications. And it shows the progression of how the taxes have been assessed and paid on this property, initially as one lot, and then starting in 2006 as 2 lots. And you can see the steady progression year after year, except for after tax year 2006, the bill is doubled. I submit to the board that this isn't, but by granting an abatement in this case, based on an error, which was is a unique error. There isn't another lot in town that this has happened to. They basically have been getting double billed on their taxes for the last 5 years. Now, the assessor agreed that that was the case in 2006 and 2007, but says, no, since we did the reassessment, now that double taxation all of a sudden is justified. Because now I've raised the values of them and now it's justified. To me, it doesn't make any sense. And as you look at the progression of the taxes, there's a steady incremental increase every year, except for once they split the tax bill in half, and then it's basically doubled for the rest of the years. And if the assessor can stand here and say, the assessor's agent can stand here and say that an error was made and that I didn't mean to increase the value by 100%, only by, it looks like about 30%, how can he say that that's not the case for the previous 2 years as well? It's all the same standard. The comps that were used by the appraiser go back as far as 2005, 2006. I just don't think you really have to get down this road at all. And I think you can find that there was an error made in that each half was assessed as if it were the whole, and abate half the taxes for the last 3 years. And that's not going to open any floodgates, because nobody else is in that situation. I mean, this is what happened to this lot. And it was agreed by the town that this happened. I mean, they've already been paid back 2 years' worth of double paid taxes. And if that's not an error, then I don't know what it is.
Any questions of Mr. O'Toole?
Are you in essence asking for a refund rather than an abatement? Is that what?
If the board wants to characterize it that way, but the abatement would have to happen, because if it was simply a refund of money, then next year they would be taxed again at the same rate. I mean, they have been doubly assessed.
It's, I thought we were looking at an abatement here, not talking about a refund.
We're going to debate this when we get to it at old
Right.
business, so I'd just like to clarify if there's any questions.
Well, that's my
Okay,
question.
All right.
Are we talking about a rebate? I mean, are we talking about a refund, or are we talking about your application to have the valuation changed? What's the request here?
I guess I fail to understand, see why you think that there is a difference there. I mean, if the valuation is lowered, they're going to get money back. That's what we're looking for.
Are we looking at the valuation, or are we looking at the fact, or that there was a double billing at some time?
There was a double valuation, is what I'm saying. This property is valued at,
But again, we're talking about this last year. We're not talking about 2 years ago, are we? Or are we talking about just this past
we're
year?
talking about 2008, 2009, 2010. It's going to happen again in 2011.
Jerry, if I understand you correctly, in 2008, the new evaluation took place on the property. So in 2008, there should have seen a significant increase in the tax bill based on the new evaluations, correct? So there were no issues of double billing. It was a matter of taxes had increased.
Yes, if I may, the old valuation was $77,400. The pre-revaluation figure was $77,400 for the whole thing. Revaluation came along, we brought values up to 100% of value in 2007. This was one that probably went up more than 200%. In fact, it did. And that is why we had the assessed value of $381,400. But the old valuation and the division line where everything increased as far as value and taxes was the summer of '07, the building of 2008. So '08, '09, and '10 are different than what happened in '06 and '07.
The '06 and '07 have been resolved.
Yes,
There was a matter of overbilling which was refunded.
right. It had really nothing to do with value as much as it had to do with being able to divide a property in half, put it in the computer, and make sure that the tax billing says that this is a half amount, and that didn't happen.
In 2006 is when the property was split so that the bill went out to two separate
Correct.
individuals.
Mhm.
Okay.
So the town takes a position that even though it's still almost exactly double,
Yeah, there are some unique coincidences, and I might add that also the coincidence of the evaluation by the appraiser was just one half of what we had appraised at too. So that just happens to be, in the same ballpark. So if we want to say it's coincident that it just went up by a certain amount, I guess we'd say that the appraisal was coincidentally just half of what we had it assessed at. But so we any other discussion relative to questions or anything, because we are going to bring this up for a vote here in about 15 minutes.
if I could add something, Mr. Chairman, just,
Yep.
and I don't want to make it sound like we're, I know what Mr. Gale's talking about. It sounds, if we bring up assessing data, then we get the accusation, well, geez, you're just flip-flopping. Now you're trying to, you couldn't win one argument, now you're going with the other one. I think it really supports still the fact that it's getting doubly assessed, but in 2008, the property the next door property, the property that is owned by the Haycocks, it's a LLC that the Haycocks brother owns. He was assessed, his property has 325 feet of lake frontage, and his property, the property itself was assessed at $5.81 per square foot. Whereas the subject property, which is not on the lake, was assessed at $6.34 per square foot. And that's,
And what did the other property go up to when the reval happened?
that was a reval.
Okay,
That's
so
post-reval.
what was it prior to the reval?
I don't know that.
Okay, so I think that's all relative.
Back in September, first time we raised this issue was actually Mr. Haycock did last summer. I got involved in September, and my initial letter to the town asked for copies of basically the assessment records, a request for copies of all the records pursuant to the Maine's Freedom of Access Law. Never received anything from the town as far as what the neighboring properties were valued at back then. I mean, there's some of that stuff is available on the internet, but it only goes back a year or two.
No, it's a separate issue, I guess I'm not sure why you wouldn't have
Just on
got
that
the
issue alone, I think the board realizes that you have you've implemented the ordinance that employees are not obligated to spend time providing information for someone who comes in and says, I want X, Y, or Z.
Well, there's a fee for it.
There's a fee for it,
Okay.
and I think we discussed that over the phone, and it was a case where the information being requested was more than just the property and the tax card. It was data and information will probably take a number of hours.
Right, well, in my mind, that's a separate issue, but that's... Any other questions? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What-
All right, we're going to run through the balance of these, this agenda, and under old business, we'll take this up again. And I'd ask Jerry if you kind of stick around if you would. Reports, town administrator's report.
Yeah, the warrant is about, I'm going to say 97% completed. It has had legal review. I'm going to give copies to the Finance Committee for their meeting tomorrow night. And they are, for them to finalize their recommendations. And once they have been finalized and put in the warrant, then it'll be ready for the Selectmen to review and sign. The insurance quotes, bids, will be due on May 18th, and they're scheduled to be open at the Selectmen's meeting that night. And Sebago Technics sent their contract for the Safe Routes to School program, and they changed their contract a little bit and threw in a 1 to 2 hour meeting with the Road Review Committee and the Board of Selectmen as a training at no additional cost.
Good.
Okay. Anything else, Nance?
That's it. It's on the second page.
Selectmen's reports?
Yes, yeah.
Anything from the board? The only thing that I'll add is that there is a signed document that's headed out that the six town, I think we've talked about this a couple of times at this meeting, between the 6 towns of the SA, or the RSU 57, the boards of selectmen have met on numerous occasions with the superintendent of schools and the business manager of school. And the proposal that they had originally talked about was somewhere in the neighborhood of 13 or 14% increase in the school budget, not in the overall budget, but the assessment to the municipalities because of the $2 million that they're not receiving in state aid from where they were last year. The 6 boards, 5 of the 6 boards, agreed that a total increase to the municipalities of 7.5% was reasonable, I guess, and supported based on the fact that if those funds went any lower than that, then they would start losing additional state subsidy and federal subsidies. So the number that kind of has been tossed around, and 5 out of the 6 towns signed documentation and requesting that the Finance Committee and the Superintendent of Schools and everybody look at hitting that number of 7.5%. And they have worked diligently to do that, and I think the last proposal from Superintendent is at 7.49%. So 5 of the 6 towns have now co-signed a 2-page statement explaining how we got to that, and in that those 5 of the 6 towns are supporting that budget going forward. I think it's a little over 8.2% to the town of Waterboro out of the 7.5% increase that is being increased to the tax base because of the lack of, or the $2 million that is being withheld from the state funding. So you will see that document, I believe, in print with the RSU substantiation data as we go into the budget votes for RSU 57. The one town that voted, did not choose to support that was the town of Newfield, and they would not sign anything over a 0% increase. So that's kind of where they are, and that's explained in this document that you'll see. But we have been prepared and signed, and I believe turned over to superintendent of the school. So I think that's really the number that we will see going into this this budget, the finalization of this budget, should it be approved And just so you know, the referendum for the RSU 57 budget will be voted on the same day that the municipal election is and the same day that the gubernatorial primary is held, which is June 8th. So, John?
I'd just like to say that I think there was a real challenge to the school board and to the superintendent of schools to come up with a budget that they did come up with. And what they needed at the end of that, in order to come down to the point where the select people from the 5 towns wanted, they needed cooperation from the teachers union and in the end, the union did agree to no increases and to furlough days. The administrators have gotten no raise for, from what I understand, 3 years now, and have agreed to furlough days. And that is all for an increase to Waterboro for about 8%. And that is including some loss of jobs in the district. So the district was dealt a bad hand by the state and by some losing of loss of student count, all that together, and some of the loss of federal monies too. All that together, they were dealt a real difficult hand, and I think they've all stepped up to the plate on this, and I think they did a great job. Tough job. They did what we asked them to do, and what we asked them to do was not easy.
Yeah, and it's not easy to swallow that level of increase either, but when the state takes $2 million right out of the funding formula that has been going to this school district, it's a little bit of a shock to the system. I think there's, to John's point, there's like 35 positions that will be eliminated, so, with this budget, so. In fact, if they had have stayed pat with zero increase whatsoever in the budget, just flat from last year, it would have been 16+% to the towns, 17% to the town of Waterboro. So they've taken a significant amount of money out of this budget. I'd like to see them take it all, but unfortunately, comes a point where you have to draw a line in the sand and say, what is it that you're going to do?
Dennis, I'd just like to add that even though the selectmen are saying that we're going to support them submitting a budget with this increase, it does not, the selectmen don't decide what the school budget is. And I've heard that from residents time and time and time, as we've talked a lot about the school budget, is they think that it's the selectmen that are setting the school budget, and we're not. We have no more say in the school budget than any other citizen that's in this town. And people that don't necessarily agree with the increase to the school budget certainly have the opportunity to have their voice heard when it comes time to vote in the polls and when they have their meeting on the budget. Much like our town meeting, it's an opportunity to go in, ask questions, and vote on certain articles, and certainly folks that feel strongly for or against the budget or want to be more informed should absolutely plan on attending those meetings.
Okay. Anything else from the board? Committee reports, we have the planning board up. Doug, are you representing the planning board tonight?
You sound so thrilled.
Your enthusiasm is overwhelming.
Yeah.
Good evening. I'm here to just fill in for the planning board. At the present time, we have 2 subdivisions before us. Both are active, and both are going to be on the agenda over the month of May. We have a site walk scheduled for 6 p.m. on 5/5 off Logan Circle. The applicant has requested that we meet there and review his plan. So we're going to do that, and then we'll have a regular meeting at 7 o'clock here in this room. On the 12th, we have a workshop in this room with the engineers from Pinkham and Greer. Some people felt the town engineers would have a conflict, as me being a member of the board and as have worked with them, that they couldn't make an honorable decision, which I thought was too bad. But we went outside and hired Pinkham and Greer. This is going to be done under the town's code of a third-party payee, so they have requested this. So this will not be a cost to the taxpayer. This will be billed directly to the applicant. And this is in discussion over the extension of the road on this property of Meadowbrook 2. There's quite a lively discussion about this on the board as to what this road should be. And so now we're going to have an independent engineer review it. And then I hope we have 7 independent people on the board decide what they should do after the engineer that drew it up, the engineer that's going to review it, and the 7 engineers on the board put in their 2 cents worth.
Where's this one done?
That's the extension to Brookside subdivision,
Okay.
the second extension onto it. There's been quite a lot of discussion. If you've watched the planning board meetings, you'll see that this has been a rather contentious issue. And there will be a public hearing here at 7 o'clock on the 19th of May. I hope that a lot of people attend it and give us their feeling, whether they want another almost dead-end subdivision or they want a road that'll accommodate an emergency situation if we have one develop. We've been working on some zoning changes. For those of you who watched the planning board meeting the other night, you'll see that an applicant came before us that wanted to take the Clint Abbott, Marjorie and Clint Abbott property in East Waterboro and tear the house down and put in a fruit stand, a farm stand, or a vegetable stand, or a outdoor market. I guess you could call it by many things. But they are farmers. This is one of the changes that is on the agenda. It just seems like in the change in time where we're all trying to go green in the world, we shouldn't have to come before the planning board. If you want to sell a few Christmas trees, you should be able to sell them, but right now you've got to come in and you've got to pay $50 or $100, I forget which, to get a permit, and you've got to make a appointment, and then you got to come in and pay that, and then hope you sell Christmas trees enough to make the money back. If you run a store in town, you can sell Christmas trees, but if you own just a vacant piece of property, or you want to sell some in front of your house, it's not legal to do that. So that's one of the issues that we've been trying to address is these things, and then bring them forward for the board to review with some good explanations as to why these things should be changed, and some alternatives to the way they're working now. We had quite a discussion the other night again about bonds. As the board is aware, we've discussed bonds, letters of credit, cash, savings accounts to the board over the years on several occasions. Still, we haven't resolved the issue. We really need to resolve the issue. We have, we're going to be faced with this shortly. When this one of these subdivisions comes up, there'll either be a bond, or there'll be a letter of credit, or there'll be cash put in a savings account. Once the board approves this, and it goes on to the selectmen, there is no mechanism here in town to follow that. There becomes a dead link. There's nothing anywheres that gives that to your town administrator. Nancy has done that job when she worked for the planning board. She used to keep track of that. But in her position now, that does not fall under her authority. It falls under the Board of Selectmen. So if a bond expires, then there's nobody to tell the code enforcement officer, look, this bond has expired, the work has not been completed, therefore we're putting houses on roads that, or what other public improvements that have to be made are not up to standards, and the bond has lapsed. We've run into this on several occasions. We really need to do something about that. And I'm standing here tonight saying, will you please address this issue? It's very simple. You can, I think Nancy's got, more than enough on her plate to do. You have Tom, who works with these people, works through the whole process. Maybe he should be the one that monitors these things. That once they're done, that he monitors them, and reports back to you, and you give him a date 60 days before the letter of credit expires, or 60 days before the bond expires, that it comes back to you, you're aware of it, and then, something is done. And there's a 60-day window there for to make sure that we don't issue any building permits after that time, or to make sure that the letter of credit gets redone or the bond gets re-upped. It's more important. The town of Waterboro has been put in a very negative position. How many times, Nancy? At least 3 that I can think
No, I'm
of.
thinking 2.
Is there any, you understand where I'm at?
Yep.
And I don't think it's a big project to get somebody to do this, but it's got to be monitored. We really need to know this. We need the people that are moving into these subdivisions, or who have site work done, or whatever the case may be, municipal improvements to be paid for by the applicant through action of the planning board, be whatever it's for. We need a way of having a trail so that this is completed, and we don't end up leaving people with half-finished projects after the person who was in charge has gone about their business and left these people in the town holding the bag. And I think very simply, yes, John?
How many bonds would you say right now are in this position where there's the lots have not been finished? How many of these would be out there right now?
At this time, I haven't been on the board long enough to know what they've issued for bonds. The last I knew, we didn't have any out there, John. There was outstanding bonds.
So I'm wondering that it might be something as simple as a computer program with a red flag that comes out a year before one of these things matures.
Okay, let's start at the beginning. When the planning board says, okay, you have an option. You have a letter of credit, you have a bond, and you have a cash account. Escrow account, okay? There's your 3 basic accounts you can have. The first thing, somebody's got to approve this. It's got to come before this board to approve it. So we'll just use Tom as a planner. He's worked with the people through the plan. He's worked with the planning board to get this done. And, when that, whatever device is used comes into the town, it should be addressed to somebody here. Then they got to bring it before the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen have to accept it. Once it's accepted, then it's got to be monitored. And every time any one of these projects is done, and a portion of the money in this bond or other account is paid by the applicant, then the bond, the letter of credit, or the escrow account has to be decreased. So it's an ongoing thing. That's why right now is a perfect time, because our slate is empty. We had west winds on the West Road that the town ended up in a mess over. We had Deer Run, is it down here on Route 5? Belanger Drive. The town ended up in a mess down there over that one. We caught that one because the planning board at the time was watching these, and we notified the code enforcement officer, who stopped issuing building permits. So there were still lots to be sold, so there was money to come from somewheres to complete the project. We had Ross Connor, the guy from New Hampshire. Pace Landing. Okay? We had Deering's Ridge. Bartlett Pines. We had the same thing. The fire pond up there never did get dug. To my knowledge, it's never been completed. So there's 4. give my old brain a few more minutes, and I might come up with some more. But there's 4 that I can think of that these things didn't follow through. And I think that we've erred enough so that we should just put somebody in charge of it and have a very simple thing. You guys authorize somebody else to do it. And I don't care, it could be one of you. Personally, I don't care who it is. But I just hope that you understand that you know, that it's in the best interest of the town for this to be followed through every step of the way.
So we don't have a mechanism for monitoring, that's the major thing. It's developing a mechanism for monitoring and having a person responsible for that.
We don't actually have any mechanism at all, John. I mean, says a bond. By a bond, you literally mean a performance bond. You know, and a performance bond is really a pretty poor document. It's a good document. Did you ever try to get money out of a bonding company? It's like getting blood out of a turnip. It just don't work. As Roger Elliott once said, you know, give me a cash account anywheres or a lien on somebody's property. Roger would take a lien on your property. If you had a piece of property you didn't owe money on, he'd be more than happy for the town to take a lien on that in lieu of a bond. He said, we can dispose of that fast without any problem. So, you know, there are...
Yeah, I think there's a couple of issues. Number one is what are we offering for options? That
Yep.
probably needs to be narrowed down in this day and age, right? To something that's conducive to the town, right? And the other issue is how do we deal with them administratively, right?
But it's important. I mean, you know, we keep hearing things looming on the horizon of other projects. And, you know, before we get into something really huge, we should have the mechanism in place, because this leaves everybody vulnerable. It leaves the code enforcement officer, you know, nobody telling that position, you know, well, you can't issue a permit, so they issue a permit, and then somebody says, why'd you issue that permit? The bond's expired. Well, nobody told me the bond expired, and it's not the code enforcement officer's, you know, job to watch these things. It's not the plan. Once the planning board accepts the plan and accepts the type of bond they want, or the type of security they want, then their job is all done by state law. We're done. Then it passes on. And when it passes on, we need to build a road for it to travel over.
But why wouldn't the logical function of the code enforcement office be tied to that? If they're issuing the permit, shouldn't the requirement be that they have to, that whoever is asking for the permit, let them know that whether or not the bond is still in effect before they get the permit? I guess I don't understand why you think Tom Rishi should do it when perhaps it should be under the office of the code enforcement, and you said it shouldn't be her job, and I'm just wondering why wouldn't it be?
Well, basically, I've never known it to be in any place that we ever worked. I never know. We'll take either Sanford or Kennebunk. If we have to put a bond in there, we have to go directly to the town manager, okay? Who most of the time works with the Public Works Department. We have to turn it in to the secretary of the town manager. And then where it goes throughout their network, we don't know, but, you know,
I'm talking about the monitoring of it, not...
Well, I don't know who monitors it in them town, but they're the ones that does it. But the town planner is always involved in the work to get it to a certain position. It's, you know, this thing has got to be developed, and if the town planner is going to work with the planning board in developing it, it just seems natural that they would be the one to follow through the whole process.
I think we need to take an action.
Dwayne did it when he was planning here.
We need to take an action to say, what are we gonna do, and go from there. So we won't solve it tonight,
The last two worked out well for the roads.
but, right.
We had, they would ask for so much money to be released, and then an independent engineer would go and check and make sure what they had done up to there was up to standard before we would even release any money. We was releasing it in increments.
Yep.
But the problem is, the way it's been released hasn't been an issue, it's worked. The problem is that in these cases, they lapsed. No,
Right.
they lapsed and nobody required them to keep them up, so then we had an unbonded or an unfunded job to continue. I mean, you're talking doing some bonded work in town, and this would follow through the whole, some jobs that are gonna be federally funded, and as we get into federally funded jobs, even outside what the planning board does, somebody has gotta follow the bonding of these things along.
Yep.
And some of that won't include the Office of Codes. It won't be anything to do with the codes garden. It'll be more to do with roads, or it might be to do with you know, infrastructure somewheres that has nothing to do with a code officer.
Maybe just an internal bond bank of sorts, that just is a database of all the bonds that are out there, that when something's getting ready to expire, it flags us, that's all.
Personally, you know, and I haven't asked the board, so I can't speak for the board, but I know this became an issue at the last meeting when we was talking about, and this applicant's gonna furnish with a letter of credit, which is, you know, a very good thing, because they're direct, that means the town dealing directly with the bank.
Yep.
And release letters, you come to the town signs off on them, and then they proceed on to the bank, and the bank pays the debt, and the letter is reduced by that amount of money. So I don't care what you use for mechanism, I'm just asking to
We
please.
need to get everybody to
Yep.
corral them.
Anything else?
I'm all set.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, new business committee appointments, I think we've got several here for Old Home Days. Yes, sir? I suppose so, David. It's a fast 2 minutes.
Not like Tom. Just so you folks can work on this transfer station recycling issue. The committee met last night, and we recommend 52 complimentary tags.
Yep.
And any additional tag would be at $1.
Okay.
We wonder if Nancy would contact Teresa Haskell and Windsor,
I did today, but I didn't hear back.
okay, to get the information we need. And our next meeting is going to be in 2 weeks, May 10th at 6:30. And we are compiling information now for public education and information sessions and stuff like that, so.
Okay. All right, thanks, David. All right, committee appointments. There's 3 here for the, for Old Home Days, I believe.
I would make a motion that we reappoint Mary Valley, Cindy Durney, and Deb Eisenhower to the Old Home Days Committee.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Done. All right, old business. Now we get to discuss this abatement request. What is, I guess before we get into debate, somebody wants to, what is your pleasure with the motion, or we can recap this either way you want?
I will move that we follow the recommendation of Jerry. And that is to reassess for the abatement of $585.12 per party for each one of the parties. And the revised valuation of $235,800 for this past year only.
Okay. Second?
I'll second for discussion.
All right. It's on the table. Let me just make sure that everybody understands, right? Recommendation from Jerry is that the current valuation that is currently on the books of $346,200 be reduced, to $235,800, predicated on the analysis that you did, Jerry, that brings us to quote-unquote 2007 standards. The request was for 106, request of the property owner was to reduce the value to 167. So this would be above that, so it's a reduction of $111,000 thereabouts in the total valuation, or $1,167 or something like that, in the two parties' taxes, $585.12 apiece. The second piece of that recommendation is that the 2008, 2009 tax issues stand,
Yes.
right? I think
Yeah.
that was your intent of your motion, at the current rate of $346,200. And I guess to further clarify, and I don't want to speak for Jerry, so jump in here, Jerry, based on the fact that the request, or the identification of a reduced value was for 2010 current year taxes, right? So I'll leave it at that, and then we can discuss.
I'd just like to mention there, the concern that I had, and that I think Kentucky Foglio expressed, is that this is Jerry's latest calculation is based on 2007 figures, and it is not a reassessment at 2010 values. It has not been depressed because of the recession. It is because of what he felt was a miscalculation in the first one. So, based on that, and I just want to make absolutely sure that people, from my perspective, I am not supporting a reevaluation of 2010 values. It's based on 2007 values.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I'd like to hear from Mr. O'Toole again as to why this piece of property is specifically unique versus other like properties on the lake. You'd mentioned that in your dissertation previously, and I'd kind of like to go over that point again for clarification. Yeah, if you would, please.
Perhaps I misspoke about it's not the property itself that I'm saying is unique. I'm saying that the way that this property has been dealt with by the town is the uniqueness. In that, if you read the history, how it was taxed as a single entity, and then when it was requested of the town that tax bills be sent separately to the two separate owners, instead of just splitting the bill, they actually created another lot, a paper lot. There's a lot on the book called Map 28 Lot 10A that doesn't even exist. It's another lot that's actually this half of 427, I believe it is, Secocas Road. I don't know if any other property in Waterboro is taxed that way or not. I suspect it's
I don't know
not.
if any other property in the town of Waterboro has this situation with it. Okay, so you can point at the town of Waterboro being unique, but the situation in and of itself is somewhat unique, and from what I understand, our system at least has to identify it as a separate. We can't just say, okay, we get one lot, and unfortunately, we split 50-50 and go from that, so.
Understood. So that's what I was talking about, and that once that happened, and both halves got assessed as if they were the whole value, which is what started happening in 2006, that it's continued.
I just want to make sure that the distinction is made between the uniqueness of the handling of this situation is not something that will come back to haunt us with a mass flood of people that have property on the lakes now saying that you know, they fall into this same category. I want to be able to have a clear delineation, you know, between that, so that we're not talking, you know, apples and oranges here.
I don't think that's what you were leading to. It was that this was a unique, I think the situation is unique, as you explained it, right? I mean,
Yes.
this is a,
I don't believe there's any other lot owner in town that ran into the same situation. So they couldn't base a abatement request on the fact that their lot turned into two lots, each separately valued at the full amount. I don't think anyone else can say that.
But I think that problem in 2006, 2007 was corrected by a rebate. So I think
Right.
that's a separate issue that's already been dealt with and shouldn't really be a consideration here. And then the 2008 is when the reassessment was done, and that's why there was an increase. So I think you're looking at two separate issues. You're looking at one issue, 2006, 2007, where the town definitely erred by issuing a double tax bill. The town corrected that. That situation is over and done with, and I think that maybe that's what's kind of confusing some of the issue. I think we need to take that and set that aside, and then look at 2008, 2009, 2010. 2008, the tax bill comes out, it's higher because of the reassessment. Coincidentally, it seems like it doubled, but it was actually based on the reassessment. So the issue here is, was the property overvalued in 2008 when the assessment was done? And I think that's what we need to look at.
I understand what you're saying, man, but I honestly don't think that happened. I don't think it was fixed. I think that we're continually double billed and that.
well, I mean,
Now, I've never been able to see the numbers that justify.
Here's
the
my
reevaluation.
feeble attempt to counter that, okay, is that if you look at the properties around the lake, properties within the municipality, when we did reval, there was significant increases in property valuation because we re-baselined those to, per the state law, to 100% of market value, okay? And I would have to agree that when you take 3,500 plus parcels in this municipality, some of them will be, there will be variables in them, okay? So to get back to the argument of we just kept double billing it, all right, then you know, I don't go along with that argument because the property values went up, okay, and that would be a different number, okay? I guess I don't hold that, I don't go along with that argument any more than coincidentally, the appraiser said, well, it's worth half of what you got it assessed at, okay? That didn't just, I mean, does that randomly just happen to be $167,000? I mean, no more than we would say that it was double billed. So I think as, you know, and I certainly understand, I think we do have, I know Jerry has made the recommendation and the motion is on the floor that we ignore any request of 2008, 2009, all right? A bit on the other side of that there is some obligation by the town if in fact we know that there was now an error. We can argue what, you know, 36 MRSA says, okay, whether or not we have the authority or we don't have the authority to abate that. So, or based on a claim of over-evaluation. So that's kind of where I am. I mean, we can argue how the numbers came. I think Tammy Jo's point, all right, purely when the split came, we put a separate second lot in it. I think there's 2 deeds, is from what I can recall as well, okay? So you've got kind of a, you know, hodgepodge there anyway. Would have been nice if there was just an LLC to deal with, but, you know, but anyway, it is what it is. The system unfortunately doubled that up. I think we've now addressed that, our error, okay? We can argue till the cows come home of and I think our point, if we go back to when we first had this discussion several weeks ago, a month ago, when we looked and reviewed the assessed value that came from the appraiser, looking at 2010 values, I don't think there was any appetite at all of saying, okay, well, we're going to now adjust things to 2010. The baseline in this municipality is 2007. So if we want to say that, I guess you could argue that, well, it wasn't worth $235,000 in 2007, I think based on land values of what your appraiser gave us in comps, I think it comps out pretty compatible. You might say that the building's not worth $82,000, but I guess we can argue that. But the land property, I think, comps out based on what Jerry did for a study, pretty close.
I hesitate to say too much because I was obviously in real estate during that time. And my personal point of view is it doesn't look like the town just doubled it, but it certainly looks like you were assessed a lot higher than you should have been on that property. I mean, just working with the market at that time, over 300,000 is certainly way high. I think the figure that Jerry came up with, the 235.8, would have been fair for 2007, and that's just from, like I said, I was doing real estate at that time, and my personal opinion as of a real estate knowledge. So,
If I answer your question, Mr. Winfrey?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other discussion?
So Jerry, the figure that you've come up with is what you feel the property was valued at in 2008 when the reappraisal was done, not based on comps in today's market.
Well, I want to make it clear, I did use the comps that were in the appraisal presented by the taxpayers. I used those comps because they were unique to being properties that had no direct access to the water. So I really took the work that the appraiser that they hired did, took their assessed values and their lot sizes, and came up with a per acre value, and then applied it to the subject. In other words, they were comparable enough to be in the appraisal, certainly comparable enough to be with the assessed value. And in doing that, what I've done is said that if we were back in 2007, and I had done it that particular way, this is the value that the land would have come out. Also add that there was a correction in the land value, only because a survey was developed and presented to us. So in 2008, we did make an adjustment downward because there was a correction in land value. So this property has been corrected a couple of times. The confusion of the reassessment, though, in 2007, I did want to add that at that time, when the property did go up to 100%, we did send out, and I don't have it printed out, 4,200 notices in July '07.
We got the phone calls.
Yeah, we got the phone call, we had to set up a special line. And at the bottom of every notice, we had the person's new value, and we went so far as to estimate what the new taxes were. We did not get any questions or at least hearings by any of the applicants. So not to say that that was okay, but it certainly was a red flag to say, this is your new value, this is your new tax. So the only time that we were brought to task was this past summer when the double error of 206 and 207 did occur.
and actually, just to Doug's point, I think if you do look at the comps and you throw out the bank sale, and you really can't count property that wasn't sold, those are the two listings. And then the cash sale, you can't really do much with the cash sale, but it looks like the land value, even if you threw out the highs and the lows, would be pretty much what he has you assessed at as land value, and that's throwing out the highs and the lows of what really your job as an assessor is to be looking at it that way, right? I'm assuming as an assessor.
Well, yes, I've come up with what we call in the assessment trade, at least in Maine law, an average assessment based on what's around you.
Yeah.
The comps being around the subject, I use them to develop an average assessment for the land.
Right, and you wouldn't be putting in a listing that hasn't sold yet.
Well, in this study, I did throw the high, the low, and average out, but it comes out to the middle.
And it comes out to the middle, yeah, and that's what it looks, I guess, from what I'm looking at it, it's kind of a medium. But that's just my
Average
personal...
would be better.
Yeah, an average.
Mr. O'Toole?
I don't know to what extent this matters to the board, but Mr. Daigle's comment about no response to the tax bills. At the time those bills came out, the reason that the tax bill was split in the first place was because the two owners didn't speak to each other. It's their relatives that don't get along. So when they got the bills, they only got half the bill. That's why they weren't complaining about the new tax bill, because they were only getting half of it. And they thought they were each getting the whole thing.
So you only paid half?
No, they paid the whole thing because we reimbursed. We
No, but I mean,
reimbursed
you,
them.
When they did the reassessment,
Thought they were paying the whole tax.
For the other person.
oh, really?
Yes,
Oh.
Yeah, but
because they weren't communicating.
We weren't involved in
the
it.
red
I didn't-
flag
Oh,
was...
you weren't involved at the
So I
time?
started
Oh,
helping my
okay.
mother
I
with
get
her
it.
finances.
I understand.
and then
Where
when I
we
found
are
out-
now, in kind
I
of
understand.
going back into that history and say, I thought this was this, or I thought this was that, I think the only thing we can deal with is, as Jerry said, was this year, as far as the, and if this is an appropriate assessment at 235,000, then I don't think we can effectively go back a couple of years and try to make a decision as to whether, it's just too much, it's too cloudy back there, and I think that legally, I'd feel only indebted to fixing it now, fixing it this year.
There is just one deed, right, with the 4 names on it, or is
No,
there
actually, there is
2 deeds?
each half has the deed. Just one question. If you're abating back at the 2007 level, right? Why does that not apply to 2008 and 9's taxes as well? Why is it only applying to 2010?
Well, I think that's part of the discussion here is that, you know, should it or shouldn't, the motion on the floor is that we would not go back to those 2 years, okay? We can debate that, you know, each side of it, I'm sure, but...
Why it would come back there.
Well, I think, you know, the law gives us the authority, and it does say that when there are irregularities and et cetera, or errors or mistakes, I think is the way that the statute reads. Municipal officers have no legal authority to grant an abatement based on the claim of overvaluation, okay? So, I mean, that's the proposal that's been presented to us, okay, and the language that's been pulled out of the statute. So, and that's what John is making reference to. Any other discussions, questions, comments? Since we're ready to vote, all those in favor of the motion? I would vote yes. All those opposed? Motion carries. So we will abate the 2010 taxes back to 235.8. The valuation now stands on the property at 235.8. We will not address the 2008 and 9 taxes. All right. I want to thank you for your patience, and I know that you're probably in disagreement, but that's the vote, and that's where we're going. So.
We appreciate your time.
All right, thank you. Okay. Any workshop issues? Warrants and bills for payroll?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Discuss vote sign minutes of 4:20.
I'll note one correction.
Yeah.
When discussing the DOT funds, it was $300,000 a year that was going to be expended, not $30,000 a year. It's in the minutes, it's $30,000 under Selectmen's reports. It should be 300,000.
All right, if you're fine with that, I'll make the correction here on the
Yep.
paper. Okay. Anything else? All those in favor? Opposed? Pending decisions, committee involvement, staff training. I guess, let me just go back to the committee involvement. Is there any feel one way or the other we continue to go forward with the committee reports? Everybody
Yeah,
good with
I
that?
think so.
Okay.
Yep, I think that's working out.
Staff training, Nancy, are we done, or,
No, we're still.
okay, in the training policy?
Yep.
The issue of map 41, lot 13,
I got a copy of a deed on that.
Okay.
I'm gonna look at it a little further.
right. Week's action list, we need to, I guess to Doug's point when he was doing the planning board report, we really need to set up a workshop or at least a discussion point, and maybe we can have Tom do some research and look at methodology that is used in other municipalities for and I think we need to look at, because we had this discussion a couple of years ago, what is now an acceptable bond process, right? And then with the planning board, Ursa, and the board of selectmen, we need to come up with how are we going to handle this.
So that will be on the week's activity list?
Yep.
Yeah, good.
Discussion of agenda items, we do have and will have, I think, as final a warrant as possible next week. I'd like to put on that probably that will consume a fairly significant amount of time, but the final warrant review, recommendations, and ultimately sign off of the warrant for town meeting. So that will consume a fairly significant piece of the meeting. Anything else?
I think I'd like to deal with the two issues that that David came up with as far as the 52 tags and the dollar per
Yeah,
tag
I think
after that.
if we can...
That's done as of 7 o'clock tonight. It's a referendum question.
Right.
Right, but, so it doesn't need to go on a referendum question, but what it needs, what we need to do is to explain the referendum
okay,
question.
yeah.
So it'll be a part of the explanation. So if we all agree on that,
Yeah.
then as we start writing the explanation, this is what it is. That it'll be 52 bags. And we need to either discuss that or vote on it, I think, so that we're all going in the same direction.
So the pay as you throw, I don't know how we're going to...
Bag and
The
tag or
specifics on
whatever.
pay as you,
We'll do
Create
this-
the policy.
Right.
yeah.
Finance committee is the reporting committee next week. Anything else that we need to throw in here?
I think that we ought to have a letter sent out to those that are running for road commissioner.
It'll go out in tomorrow's mail.
It'll go out in tomorrow's mail, letting them know about the,
Okay.
I just think, they have to know, I think, up
The
front.
legal stuff, yeah.
Yeah, because,
agree.
you know, they've got to try to make plans on,
Yep.
you know, equipment that they have that they might want to retain or get rid of, or...
Okay. Anything else?
Should we sing happy birthday to Gordon before we...
No, I think we ought to, I've already had to kiss the moose once this week, and,
So, in lieu of singing
61.
In lieu of singing happy birthday to Gordon,
Thank you.
As a
Thank you,
reminder.
Mr. Chairman.
items needing signature, warrants of bills for payroll, the minutes of 4:20, and appointment papers. Reminders, Finance Committee tomorrow night, 6:30 PM at the Town Hall. Land Trust, 7 PM, Town Hall tomorrow night. Old Home Days Committee, 7 PM Thursday night. Monday, May 3rd, 6 PM is Water District Trustees meeting. Tuesday, the 6 PM, right back here, the Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee will be reporting. Anything else? If nothing else, John?
Why is it always got to be me that's got to adjourn? I'll,
I think it's become sort of a tradition.
yeah, I'll move that we adjourn. Don't want to let you guys down.
Somebody want a second?
Sure, second.
All those in favor? Done deal. Good evening.